And they had these gigs with Andre Matos, and one was opening for Manowar, so like a big festival.
Hey, Alessandro, how's it going? It's Brandon calling from Canada.
Hi, Brendan. How are you? All good?
Good, good, good. Yeah, how about yourself?
I'm very good. I'm very good.
Excellent. Funny enough, I just finished talking to Roberto from Secret Sphere.
Oh, it's your Italian
So
name.
he says hi. He dropped your name during the interview, and I said, "Oh, well, funny enough, I'm talking to Alessandro in like an hour."
Yeah, we're friends, and they're coming out with this incredible record full of so many influences, and I'm very happy for them.
Yeah, he was telling me about on Lifeblood. I guess you sang some of like demoed some of the songs on vocals. So he said, yeah, he Alessandro made this one particular song absolutely impossible for me to sing. So thank you very much.
It's not true. I saw him perform the songs live. He's incredible. And but yeah, I guess I co-wrote with Aldo like 4 songs, and we did the vocal production in my studio, and I also did backing vocals with the whole choir. Yeah, he complained about the songs that I co-wrote, but he does a great job. He really did a great job on those songs in the studio and also live. Live is incredible.
Yeah, well, I mean, as incredibly talented singer. So no doubt he was able to pull it off.
Yeah.
So when I do these, I like to start at the beginning of you as a musician and then work our way up to the new Edge of Forever record that you've got.
Yeah.
So going back to the beginning, where did you grow up and how did you get started in music?
So I grew up in the north of Italy, part in the north of Italy, and part of my childhood was in the south of Italy. Because my parents are from like 100 kilometers, like 60 miles from Naples. But we moved to the north in this area, which is very close to Milan. It's between Milan and the Alps. It's called the Seven Lakes region because it looks like almost like Klondike and British Columbia and those places, because it's between the mountains and the lakes, and very close to Switzerland.
That's really cool. How did you get started in music?
So my mom, being from Naples, my earliest memory of her, it's her singing, because she still does it. She sings the whole day. She's singing every day, every minute. And my father is a great prog rock and classic rock fan from the 70s and 60s. So honestly, my earliest memories as a kid are me listening to music, me listening to my mom singing, and being with my father and my brother in our living room, listening to vinyls from the Beatles, from Genesis, from Jethro Tull, from Jimi Hendrix. And when I was 5 years old, my favorite record was Selling England by the Pound by Genesis, which is, absolutely unusual for a 5 years old child to have it was a favorite record. But that really shaped my musical taste. And then when I was 13, I listened for the first time. I heard Queen, the song Bohemian Rhapsody, which totally blew me. Like it sounded like a bomb dropped. And in that exact moment, I said, after probably listening to the song for like 17, 18 times in a row on a
as
cassette,
as you do
like,
when you're that age.
yeah, like it was like a religious experience. And my dad came home that night from work, and all I said was like, Dad, I don't want to play soccer anymore, because I wanted to be a soccer player. I said, I don't want to play soccer anymore. I want to be a musician, and I want to be like Freddie Mercury. I want to play the piano, I want to sing, and I want to write songs. He was like, oh, well, he looked like he was ready to hear those words from me. And he said, okay, tomorrow we're gonna buy a keyboard, and so that we can see, your passion grow. And my uncle was a classical piano player, and he gave me my one and only piano lesson when I was at that age. And as soon as I've heard that I had to learn the scales before learning the songs, I was like, no, I want to play the Queen songs. I don't want to learn the scales. I don't see any use of learning the scales when I can learn the songs. And it was like, no, that's not how it works. But at that age where the internet was, you didn't know how bands would play those songs and stuff like that. My uncle showed me how the scales were constructed, and then I was like, okay, I just move by semitones and I will cover all the keyboard. And then I started to realize that I could learn the songs by ear. And a few months later, Dream Theater came out with Images and Words. A friend of mine, imagine 92 in Italy, a friend of mine came to me and he said, Ale, I've just listened and I've discovered the best band in the world. They play metal, but they have keyboards. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, oh, you have to listen to this. And he played me Metropolis Part 1.
That was my intro to the band too, and that blew my mind.
And I mean, my God, I get shivers now. I mean, because imagine a 13 years old kid hearing that intro, like the bone, that intro. I was blown away. And the week after, another guy came and said, oh yeah, Dream Theater, they're good. But do you know that there's a better guitar player than John Petrucci? And he said, he's the best guitar player in the world, the fastest and the coolest. His name is Yngwie Malmsteen. And he gave me the Live in Japan, the cassette, the VHS cassette. And I came back from school, and that was another religious experience. And I was like, God, how can it be so cool? And how can these guys play like that, sing like that? And basically, I mean, those moments were the moments when I realized that all I wanted to do in life was making music.
So I've got to ask you this then, jumping ahead, 2 decades, you got to sing with have James Labrie rather sing on one of your tracks. How was it having, pulling up the faders and hearing him sing on No Holy Man?
So when we did, on No Holy Man was my audition with Eden Skurs, because they knew that I could write. And Paul Logg, the bass player and main songwriter of the band, he sent me the song and he said, what would you write as a melody on this part? I didn't know that James Labrie was supposed to sing on that song. And after a few minutes, I just sent back the MP3 with, the melody on that pre-chorus. And he liked what I did. He liked the keyboard part. And he said, okay, welcome to the band. On a side note, James Labrie is going to sing on this song, your part. And I was like, oh my God. And then when I met James, I told him about, the Metropolis. And, but my life has been always like that. I mean, the Deep Purple guys, Ian Pace, Glenn Hughes, Ian Gillan, Johnny Gioeli, Dean Castro, all these guys were musicians that I literally adored in my teens as a growing up musician. And I ended up playing with all of them. Sometimes I make jokes because, I get questions like, who is left from your bucket list? And it's very few actually from my childhood heroes, but it's crazy because I'm not starstruck, but I always talk to the kid back then. I'm always like, oh my God. I mean, I remember listening to these records and wearing out those cassettes, those CDs, and all the memories. Because when you're in your teens, the music becomes instant memories, movies, because it's more than a soundtrack, especially at that age and in Italy, where those records, you had to work hard to get these records. Sometimes I had to order from Japan records that I couldn't find anywhere else. Or I had to go to see a concert in Germany or Switzerland in order to find those CDs, because sometimes they were like poorly distributed in Italy. And music was religion, still is religion to me, but back then it was really like, listening to some of these records were, it was like seeing the light. I mean, it was pure spiritual experiences where music would become the whole, absolutely the whole, everything around.
So tell me this then. I completely agree, by the way. I mean, I think most teenagers too. I mean, music just hits you in a certain way, especially at that age, because also everything's brand new, you know? You haven't heard 40 bands that sounds like Dream Theater at the
Yeah,
time it was Dream Theater. And it's, oh my God, you know?
yeah.
When then, so you said you're about 13 or so when you started playing keyboards and piano. When do you start playing in bands? And what was your first band?
A few weeks later, I was in first grade. No, I was in first class of high school, which in Italy is when you're 14. And my friend that I was sitting with at the table was a guitarist. And we said, oh, we gotta make a band. And that band then turned into Edge of Forever. So that's that's kind of one of those encounters. And but right away, I knew that, my instinct, I had to follow my instincts, because back then, really, literally, you couldn't know anything because you didn't have books about, like today you have all these biographies. You can learn what they did and you can apply that. But back then you only had those short interviews on paper magazines and metal magazines and stuff like that, and you had to learn by doing. And I knew that I had to be in a band in order to learn how to play with the others, because I didn't want to be the best musician. I wanted to have the best band, and I wanted to write, great songs. And I knew that I could only get better by playing with other musicians, playing with better musicians than myself, and put myself in situations where I was challenged by the repertoire. And that really led me, at a very early age to be a professional, like around 16, 17. I signed my first contract when I was 16, but around 17 I was already a professional musician. And because I wasn't just a musician playing keyboards or singing or writing songs, I was a musician that was penned in, mostly every day in rehearsals rooms with different bands, with different musicians. And I never said no. Like even repertoires that were out of my comfort zone, too difficult at that moment, I was always like, guys, bear with me. I have an iron will. I will work my, my butt off to get to these songs the way they should be. That emergency mode that I was always in, because I was always learning new repertoires, learning new songs, and playing with great musicians all the time, it really taught me how to build, actually wire my being musician by making music. And already, probably when I was already like 23, 24, I already played like hundreds of concerts. And they gave me miles in advance to the other musicians in Italy, because nobody had the dreams that I had. I mean, everybody was like, "Oh, you will never make it. How can an Italian guy play with American and English musicians? They will never find you. They will never see you. This is too big for you. You shouldn't do it. Nobody wants to play with an Italian musician." So I literally, my iron will was applied to all the stages of music. The way, the human side, I knew that I had to be a great person to be with and not just be a great musician, because I never liked when somebody was not acting right around me, and while making music. So I said, I don't think this is good. I should be, I want to naturally be a great person to hang with. And I knew that I had to be good. I realized that at an early stage that you had to be somehow when you end up working with someone, it's obvious that you're going to be good for the job. So you have to have something extra so that you can win over the other guy that's going to be probably even better than you for that job. So I had to learn skills that others were not underestimating, but I knew that for what I wanted to do, I had to have that. That's how I learned to be, to produce, to work in the studio, to record, to write, to sing, to be a guy with multiple resources, because I knew that I would have used all my talents and all these, crazy ideas that I had. I would have used them, somehow, somewhen.
Yeah, I think, what you're describing is being a good team player.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's so funny because that's definitely one of the secrets to the music business is to go in and be someone, like you say, doesn't say no, who's going to be, okay, how can we work better for the song? How can we work better for each other? And how can I not be difficult to work with?
Yes, absolutely. I don't remember the name of the documentary that came out a few years ago. Probably it's Wrecking Crew or something like that, or Sideman. I don't remember, but it featured Nito Strauss, Ryan Roxy, and other session players and team players for other musicians, and I think Kenny Arnoff and musicians like that. And they all said the same thing. Once you start working with music, you want to be the guy that's wanted, by other musicians. You don't want to be the guy that nobody wants on a tour bus. You don't want to be the guy that nobody wants in the studio. And I've always been humble, extremely humble, like very determined on pursuing what I wanted to do, but very humble because, I've always said to myself, I will never be done because my heroes, my idols, my references were so good and are still so good that I will never be done. So everything combined made me a team player and someone that was not in a fight with music, but in love and respect with music. And I always played for the songs. I never wanted to show off, never cared about, if you're a virtuoso, to just show off for the sake of it. But I always played for the songs and I always loved to play the songs, no matter, if the song needs a simple pad that works, I want to be the guy playing the pad the best way I can play it. That really forged my attitude, and I've always been okay. I'm always a cool guy to work with. I have strong ideas, and I fight for my ideas, but I'm always respecting the musicians that I'm working with, big or small. Sometimes you're in the business, you're working with unknown musicians and you kind of treat them, not so good. I don't want to be that guy. Even the guy that nobody knows, I want to give my 100% and beyond, because you never know. Because I was the not known guy, and the great musicians treated me really well. They believed in me, and I want to apply what worked for me. Being a good guy, being a good person, and love music, and just wake up and do it for the love of music. If you can pay your bills, it's fantastic, but still respecting music like when you were a kid. And I always say to all my musician friends, don't forget why you started in the first place. When I said I want to be a musician, I didn't even know that you could make a living out of it. When I started to get paid, I was shocked. I was like, oh, that's the best job in the world. I'm making music and they pay me for that. And still today I have this attitude. I'm always like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you, universe, for allowing me to still work with, something that I love, that I'm in love with. Sometimes even calling it a job is like, oh my God, it's a sacrilege. It's not right, because I still remember when I started to get paid, I was like, oh my God, that's the greatest feeling in the world. You're paid for something that you started, just for the passion of it. It's literally the best feeling in the world.
So, one of the first things that you did was playing with the Italian prog metal band Time Machine.
Yes.
Were you like a full member of the band as part of albums, or did you just tour with the band?
I literally played on a record that never came out. So I only toured with the band when Andre Matos from Angra was singing with the band. And that was my first encounter with one of my idols. And I remember when I got the call because a friend of mine was playing guitar in Time Machine, and they had a keyboard player that couldn't. It's funny because he couldn't play what he recorded in the studio, and they had these gigs with Andre Matos, and one was opening for Manowar, so like a big festival thing. And he called me and he said, "We don't know who to call, and I made your name. The band leader doesn't know you, but he knows that I would never call anybody that's not, that's not exceptional for the job." And that's how I met Andre, and that's how we became friends. And that was my first time that I told myself I'm on the right path. It's tough, but I'm on the right path. When I got on stage with Andre, and oh my God, that show, like 30,000 people. And at that time, he just left Angra. So it was like at the apex of his career. Like everybody knew him. You couldn't even walk around in Italy. They were so famous that you couldn't walk because everybody was like, "Oh my God, Andre Matos." And 30,000 people screaming, that energy really changed everything for me because I was like, yeah, I'm on the right path. I knew that it would be a long road. I said, but that's the right path. So I trusted the purpose and the path that I was on.
So I think it was like you said, the Edge of Forever sort of started when you were, I guess, 14 or so.
Yeah. Like the first inception was another band, was like more of a prog metal band, but that turned into Edge of Forever around 99, 2000.
Oh, okay. So did you take a couple members from your original band and sort of evolve it into what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
The guitar player, my friend that's cool, who's been my writing partner for the first two Edge of Forever records, Matteo Carnio. And I wanted to have like a hard rock, Mumsden, AOR-ish band. And we started writing songs, and that's how we did a demo that people seemed to like, and we got offers from labels. And that was the demo that I gave Jeff Scott Soto and Marcel Jacob at a Dio show. And literally that day, my life changed because I thought, oh, maybe they're gonna throw it in the trash, or use it to take away the eyes from the car, from the car shield, whatever. And I was like, okay. But 2 weeks later, they wrote me and they were like, okay, we were surprised. We thought, I mean, we would get one of those bad demos, but we really like what's there. How can we work together? So yeah, those years writing songs with Matteo for Edge of Forever were like viral for who I am today.
That's incredible too. So did Jeff, because you have done a couple records with him now in recent years, but was he instrumental in giving you a push in those early days? Other than saying he liked it, but did he like show it to anybody?
Yeah,
or?
I mean, he was like, Ale, you have to come to LA. You cannot do what you want to do in Italy alone. You have to move to LA, and I'm going to be your mentor. But I didn't have the money to go to LA. I wish I had, but maybe, life would be very much different. But I didn't have the money to go to LA. And I said, well, Jeff, we'll make music, from the distance, whatever. And we did a couple of tours together with Talisman and with his solo band. And we've been friends since 2003. That happened in 2002, and he's been a friend. But the person that really was my mentor was Marcel Jacob. He was literally my guiding light, my mentor back then. He produced the first Edge of Forever record, and he helped me in business choices and gave me advices until a month before dying. I mean, he was there for me for all these years. And he helped us, get a deal and, everything. So, I mean, that demo that I gave them because I mean I didn't know that they were recording a record in Italy. And I went to this Dio show. Funny thing, at that show, I think, yeah, it was the one with Greg Goldie, Simon Bright, and I think it was Chuck Garrick on bass. But Simon and Craig are musicians that I worked with. And but that night I just went to the show. I get into the venue, and I turn around and I see Jeff Scott Soto and Marcel Jacob. Nobody is caring about them. And I was like, "What? It's Jeff Scott Soto in freaking Milano." And I said, I've never done something like that. I was like, that's once in a lifetime. I have to go to the car, get a CD, like a demo, and give it to them. And I went there. I was like, with the higher respect, I just want to give you my demo, and I never do those kind of things. But I make music because of, the Live in Japan by Malmsteen, and I love Talisman, is one of my favorite bands, and this and that. Then they were like, oh my, their faces were like, oh, who's this punk, coming here? And I gave them a demo, and and we're here, thanks to that.
It's incredible too that they took the time, because I've always wondered that myself. It's one of those things where you just go, I don't know if I should. And in your case, it totally worked out, which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I would never do it today, but back then I was 22, 23, brave enough and confident enough and crazy enough to do something like that. And I have to say that that was a big lesson. And I'm always listening to everything that I'm sent. Like, if they give me a CD, I always reply. I always listen to the songs, and I always write them, because that attitude literally gave me my dream. And I'm always, trying to listen to everything they send. But also at that time, the world was kind of different. And these musicians probably were given way less music than today, because today on social media, you can literally, send messages every day with links and videos and stuff like that. But back then, if you see a guy and you get a professional press kit demo and everything, it really looked, different than other things. And probably I made a good impression, and they were like, oh, let's check this Italian crazy kid. And when I got the email from Marcel, I was like, I couldn't believe that. I was like, oh man, I made it. But I knew that, going back to what we talked before, I knew that I could, if I wanted to be that good, I had to work with these guys. I had to prove that I could work with these guys. And and pride yourself, and know that you get there, you're prepared, you're the right person for the job. You're always accomplishing the goals, and even more, and surprise them. I want to surprise the people I worked with. And I remember when I was in the studio with Marcel, I was like, oh my God, I have to be good. I came so prepared. I think I recorded all the keyboards like in 5 hours or something like that. All the patches were perfectly, ready to mix. And I know the parts, and those solos, I improvised those solos, but I played them so many times that I was like, nailing everything at first take. But I knew that I had to be like that. I knew that I had to be, still today, when I make records with Jeff, and in the last 5-6 years, we've been doing, lots of records, like 2 of his records, but we've been doing sessions together and writing songs for many artists. And Jeff still remembers, when he came to the studio, and he saw me so into my element and so willing to make great music. And I never took what was coming to me for granted. I was always like, oh my God, if Glenn Hughes calls me, I have to be better than the guy before, better than the guy after me. I have to be a musician that they have to have in their mind forever. I don't want to be just another guy. I want to be, a person that they can, in 10, 20, 30 years, they would go like, oh, wow, I worked with Ale 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and it was already like that. And I knew that I had to do it.
Yep. So you had mentioned Johnny Gioeli. How did you come to join Hardline? Because the band, I think, was done for like a decade or something, right? And
Totally,
then,
yes. Yeah, it was on a hiatus for like 8 years or something like that. That was Serafino from Frontiers. I sent some demos to Frontiers. I guess after the fifth or sixth, Serafino wrote me and he was like, "Can you write a song that I can send to Johnny Gioeli?" And I literally, I mean, I was like dying. I was like, "Oh yeah, sure. When do you need it?" He said, "Oh, in a couple of days." 4 hours later, he got Fever Dreams, sent it to Johnny Gioeli, and Johnny answered back and he said, "You like Journey? I mean, this song is great. Can you write more?" And I started to write songs. And those days, I didn't know day and night. I was like, didn't sleep, wrote songs, worked on those demos hard because I wanted to, write the best songs that I could. And then Johnny liked what I was writing and what I was doing, and he said, "Well, why don't we resurrect Hardline?" Talking with Serafino, and that's how it went. I mean, just the power of the songs that I wrote.
and was it around the same time, I think, that you worked with Lionville, correct?
Yeah, I started 2 years earlier with Lionville, and basically the second Lionville was the reason why I think I talked to Elio from Frontiers, and I said, "Elio, seems like you're liking what I did with Lionville. Do you want something in that style?" And that's how I sent the demos to Frontiers, thanks to Lionville.
That's amazing. Now, tell me this. So, you worked on one of my favorite records of 2013, Silent Force, their comeback album, Rising from the Ashes.
Oh,
Tell me about working with them. I mean, what an incredible cast of musicians. I mean, Andre Helger's on drums, Alex from Primal Fear and Sinner and a million other things, Michael Borman from Xeno and Letter X and all the stuff he's done. Tell me about working with that cast of musicians on that record.
so back then I was working with Alex and Matt with Voodoo Circle. I don't remember if I already joined the band, but I was the touring keyboard player since 2011. And Alex one day wrote me and he said, "Would you like to join Matt and myself on Silent Force?" And I was like, "What?" He said, "Oh, we're not gonna have DC on vocals. It's gonna be Michael Borman." And I was like, "Oh my God, one of my favorite singers." And still today, I'm always referring to that record when somebody wants to hear me playing keyboards. I'm always like, that record has some of my best keyboard parts. The songs were exceptional, and the playing on the whole record is just the production, everything is just phenomenal. It's a pity that we didn't do another record with that lineup, that we didn't play shows with that lineup. But still today, I mean, it's one of my favorite records that I've worked on. And I've always been like, in awe for these guys. And then I was, and working with them on this fantastic record with great songs. And I didn't write the songs on that record. There was Alex and Michael, but they gave me like, they said, "These are blueprint for your keyboard. Just play what you want to play." I literally came up thanks to those songs with, the best songs that I honestly played on, and the best keyboard parts have always been those songs. And still today, I'm like sending that record when somebody goes like, "Oh, can I hear you play metal?" Well, that is the best example. That one and Trinity by Eden's Curse. And that, in that time frame, like 2011, 2013, I don't know. I was into that kind of play-in, but Silent Force Rising from Ashes, that record has my best keyboard parts ever.
Yeah, I agree. What a phenomenal record from everybody. Honestly, it's some of Alex's best guitar playing. I mean, Michael sounds
Yeah,
amazing on that,
fantastic.
If I can say anything for that, I seriously hope you guys do another at some point. I don't know if it'll happen, but
I would love to. I would say yes in a heartbeat because I love Alex, Matt. They've been, some of my best friends in the business, and we've done exceptional music together. And I always tell Alex I miss those years because we were just in a moment with Voodoo Circle and Silent Force. We really made music that still today, I mean, if you go back to that Silent Force record, still today you go like, oh my God, I mean, did we do that? Like so naturally and so good. Like we didn't even realize how good it was until it was finished. I remember when I heard the master, I was like, wow, did we do this? Did we actually create this? I miss those years. They were just fantastic years, playing together with Alex and Matt. I could see them every month. And yeah, it was a magic moment, really magical moment.
yeah. Yep. No, that's one record that I pull out all the time.
Oh,
It's
thank
just one
you.
of, I think everybody has those albums, right? I mean, I've probably got about 20 that just once a year I have to listen to, or more than that, And I mean, Circle of Trust and so many songs from that album will just randomly come up on my iPod, and they never get skipped,
Well,
you know.
that's very cool to very, very cool to hear. And you should see the smile on my face. I'm like, it's really means a lot because it really came out of a magical moment, you
That's
know?
amazing. Another favorite of mine that you did was the Key of Hearts record with Tommy Hart and Kee Marcello. Tell me about doing this record. I really think with that record, you kind of channeled sort of that, late 80s Europe with Fair Warning, and you sort of melded the two together really, really well. So tell me about doing that with those two guys.
The idea was always Serafino who wanted me to work with Tommy Hart, and we were looking for a guitarist, and I said, well, maybe Key wants to do it. And that was like I saw a freaking guitar god in action. He recorded all the guitars for that record in less than a day. I was petrified. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was exceptionally good. It is still exceptionally good. I don't know how many people can really, go to a studio and record that good in such a short time. And unfortunately, then they had, I don't remember what legal thing, and they didn't continue on Frontiers and basically kept the same formula as Out of This World. It was called Out of This World. And they did another record, but oh my God. I mean, like Tommy Hart, such a singer, and Key, oh my God, what a guitar player. And I still like some of those songs are still, some of my favorite because I still remember when I wrote them and when I got Tommy and Key to play and sing on them, and it was great experience. And I'm still friends with both of them. I mean, if I see Key or Tommy around, we're like, hugging each other and always going like, oh, we should do more. We should do something else together.
I'm completely in favor of that. Yeah, Tommy's easily one of my, probably top 5 favorite singers, and anything he sings on, I will listen to. So
Fantastic.
would definitely love to hear another one. Okay, here's another one that, as far as I know, flew under the radar big time, but is another favorite of yours that you've done for me. Is the Love Killers record with Tony Harnell.
Oh,
Tell me about
oh my
that
God,
one,
I love that
because
record.
that to me, I don't hear anything about it. It's just, but it's just what a great
It's
record.
crazy.
Like what, you know?
Yeah, that is a crime, that record didn't really make it. I don't know why it didn't cut through, everything and get to the fans. And I don't know. But first of all, I absolutely adore Tony's voice, and the way he makes music is that good, unique, incredible, and fantastic to work with. But yeah, but I don't know what happened. Like, people seem to, I don't know if it was, maybe too many records coming out at the same time, and people just didn't dive into it enough to make it a success more than other records that I don't think deserved, the success they had at the same time. While, I really think that record has, great, fantastic vocal performance, and the songs are pretty unique. And on that record, the guitar player is Gianluca Ferro, who used to be the guitar player in Time Machine. And he is, easily one of the most unique guitar players in the world. He always has these solutions that are different than anybody else. And all the effects and sounds that you hear on the record, it's him on a guitar. He has this style of creating intros and sounds and, waves out of his effects, almost like, Adrian Belew, those guitarists that are like, you don't know how they can do it. And I think the vocal parts and guitar parts on that record are exceptionally good.
Tell me about how did the cover? It's like number 9. I'm blanking on the name of the song.
Oh yeah, the song from the Veronicas.
Yeah. How did that wind up on the
Well,
record?
that was Serafino. Serafino loved the song and said, "Why don't you guys make a cover out of it?" And that's how we made it. Simple, simple as that. And what I'm on Spotify because I don't remember the title.
Is it Silently Broken? Is that it?
Heavily Broken.
Heavily Broken. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great tune.
Great. I
That
mean, great song to begin with, and we just made our own version of that.
that was fantastic. So let's talk recording. So I'm a bit of a gear nut myself. How did you get into
Cool.
recording and
Okay.
mixing? Was it just purely out of I have to be able to do this for myself, or did you go to school for it? How did you get into recording?
No, I didn't go to school for that. I wish I had the money to do that, but I didn't. Back then, everything was private regarding music. I mean, especially for modern music. But my father had a PA company, not big, but he was, a sound engineer, PA rental person. And I always loved the recording side of things, the production side of things. And I simply started to record my ideas. And he bought me a computer with, I guess, Logic 3, 2 on it. And he gave me one of his mixing desks because I needed, back then into a computer, you could only record 2 tracks. And so I needed to patch all the keyboards and stuff into the mixing board. And I started to record my own demos and start to program the MIDI, MIDI drums and MIDI bass and stuff like that. And that's how I got into production and arrangement. And then when I worked with Marcel and Bobby Barth on the first 2 Edge of Forever records, I loved the job of the producer. I liked, this director from the couch, working on making the record better. And then in 2005, I left like a top 40 cover band that I had at that time that literally was paying my bills and my records that I was doing with Edge of Forever and other bands. And I was like, okay, now I didn't want to play covers anymore. And I was like, okay, now what should I do? And that day, a friend of mine called me and said, "Oh, there's a studio that's looking for a sound engineer. Do you think you want to do it?" And I never had worked with my own hands on a preamp or compressor or like a mixing desk, like a Neve, 1073, mixing desk and something like that. But I had a call with the studio manager and he said, "Do you have experience?" I was like, "Well, not really, but I am a recording artist and arranger, and I think I can learn fast enough." I went to the studio and they didn't have the time to train me. So I was thrown into this world and I only used my ear to at the beginning to learn what these machines were doing. But the other engineer in the studio, because we were two engineers for two shifts, I would stay in during the other engineer's shift to learn what to do with. I remember they had one of the first Avalon 737 back then in Italy, and I used to steal his knowledge just by assisting him. And then then while I was working there, a friend of mine was like, "Would you produce my band?" And I was like, "Oh, but yeah, but I would do it, but it's my first time." So I talked to the studio manager and he was like, "Yeah, you know what? You can do the third shift at night with this band. You work for free. I don't want to get paid, but at least can work on a record where you can experiment." And so those 5 years in that big studio really gave me the knowledge of, what producing and recording a record was. I literally started jumping in knowing only Logic, first time on Pro Tools. And I was like, it cannot be that different. So I bought with, my last money that I had, I bought a white MacBook and installed Pro Tools like 5 on it with a DigiDesign M box. And back then, literally, I was never sleeping because I was doing my shift in the studio. Then I was assisting the other engineer. Plus, at night, I was studying. I was bringing projects into my room, and I was working on my MacBook to learn what to do. And yeah, and that's how I got into that. And then Ben started to call me, and I've never been, even if I love the technical side of things, but I've never been a sound engineer, mixing engineer, or producer too much into the technical side of it. I just follow my ear and I trust my ear, because I think that if you have a clear idea what you want, you're going to use any tool and the tool is going to give you the result you want. But those 5 years, like working, million hours a day in a studio, really gave me the basic knowledge to be the producer and a mixing engineer that I am today. And the studio was like one of those playgrounds for sound engineers because they had everything from 1176 to Sanken microphones to U47 to everything.
Wow.
And yeah,
As a
so
singer, I'm salivating at the U47.
yeah, and I could use a discount to record records there and be, and if a band was calling me and I was like, okay, I'm gonna talk to my studio manager. If I can get a better deal, you're gonna allow me to work longer on your record so that we can experiment and we can have fun. And they had a fantastic recording room, like a big chapel kind of little theater shape drum recording room. They had like, at that time they had like, it was a 48 channels Neve console and all the preamps and compressors that you would want to have. And just by experimenting, again, back then the internet was not what it is today. You couldn't get knowledge. You only had to try to replicate what you had on the records, what you had on other records. Like one of the best sounding records, in my opinion, of all time in our genre is Winger Pole.
Absolutely.
And
Incredible record.
yeah, and I was like, I love this snare sound. there must be a magic frequency. And I was literally trying to emulate the records that I loved, like Double Eclipse by Hardline, Winger Pull. Then I loved, Images and Words, and I loved Awake. All those great sounding records. And I always loved the 70s great productions like Pink Floyd and Boston and, Yes, and all these bands. And I literally, just learned by trying to emulate those kind of sounds. And then, I was working at the same time. I was, working in the studio for other bigger artists, so I could, go. I was always, if, I was, I don't know, with the band, I was always there when the drummer was recording, because I wanted to see better engineers than myself at that time what they were doing. And then I was like, that sounds like that record. So let me apply that. And then around 2010, 9, when Another Paradise by Edge of Forever and the Shining Line debut album and the Lionville debut album, that's when I started to apply all that knowledge for my own studio and my own production sound. But when I was working in a commercial studio, let's say that, where the clients are going from death metal to pop to polka to everything, that was like learning by, like I was thrown in a river and I had to learn how to swim. And I will never be grateful enough to the studio manager who was like, yeah, I like your, he was a fan of my records with Edge of Forever. And he was like, I like what you do there. You're going to learn. I know that you're going to learn. And he was paying me basically for experimenting in that studio. But he really needed an engineer that could play instruments, that could, arrange backing vocals. We were doing lots of pop back then. I had this playground to play with, and I was sleeping in the room next door to the studio. I was literally living in the studio. Then one day I realized that I had to do my own thing. I was like, I cannot develop my own sound if one day I do pop and the day after there's a grindcore band, because then you just simply don't never create a workflow that's going to be exceptional. You just, especially a studio like that has to get all the clients in the world because it's so expensive. At that time, our bill for electricity, for power, was like $250 a day.
Oh my
So
God.
they had to get clients. And sometimes we were like, oh my God, we're doing this karaoke, whatever, guys. But everything served the purpose. And same thing with music. At the beginning, I didn't say no to anything because I knew that I could learn from anything. And especially, I mean, the Italian pop at that time, the recording quality was exceptional. It had to be exceptional. So when you were working with a number one in the charts singer, you had to know how to work out those vocals. And I remember that I was doing the American way of compressing vocals with an L8 2A, like on max. And at the beginning, everybody was like, oh, that's too compressed. But then they liked it. And everybody was like, oh, I want to work with Ale because it's got the American vocal sound. but I only wanted to, all I wanted to do was to have, my records to sound with the same, sonics as Bruce Fairbairn and Mike Shipley and Bob Rock and those guys. Because especially Mike Shipley, and House Smith. I mean, these guys, I remember the first time that I played a Tambu by Toto, that drum sound. And so I was just applying what I loved from my rock and roll world to everything. And it served the purpose because that's when I learned how to use those machines that are still, in my studio. And but I at that time I would have never had access to those kind of outboards and machines if I didn't work in a commercial studio.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for you doing, there's that saying of putting 10,000 hours in to become an expert.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
living in a studio for 5 years will definitely do it, especially like you say, if you're also arranging and doing everything. I mean, pretty much you were doing the every genre version of what you're doing right now with all these
Yeah,
bands.
yeah. I mean, I back then I did everything, like, dance hits, like pop hits. We had this singing priest singing metal in Italy. I produced that, was very famous. We were doing everything, and you had to be musical enough to do everything and good enough to be able to fit every genre. But there was lots of experimentation and research, because sometimes we were like, okay, so tomorrow we have this dance production. I've never worked that, so we have to spend some time listening to the references, and maybe go 2 hours before in the studio, and and experiment, so that we can get those kind of vocal cuts, vocal sounds, vocal production. And I'm grateful that I can do the music I love. But I loved at that time the challenge to do, I mean, to record singers every day. I was the singer and drum guy. And because I always loved the big drum sounds. And these guys were like, how can you do that? But my references were not pop records. My reference was like freaking Dean Castronovo on the Bad English records. So I was getting all these room mics and, big compression, and, like the Bon Jovi New Jersey drum sound. And so I became the drum guy and the vocal guy, because I was listening to records with great drum sounds and great vocal sounds.
That's so funny. That's me too. I mean, that's one of the first things I listen for on a record. If the drums sound like everything else is going to suck.
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, I don't want to say that out of disrespect, but to record a guitar good enough to cut on a record, yeah, sometimes you really need a 57 straight into the preamp.
Yeah.
You don't need anything else. But to have a great drum sound, you really have to work. You have to work that drum sound for our genre. You have to work that sound, because some of these records have, you're competing with big rooms and samples and compression all the way through. But if the drum sound, it doesn't matter the genre, but if the drum sound doesn't work, the whole song just falls apart.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny, like all the records you're mentioning, those are all of my favorites for the same reason. I mean, like Queensryche Empire and Dream Theater Awake
Oh
and
my God, that snare, the snare and hi-hat on Empire. Oh my God, how can you do it? I mean, but we're talking about the best of the best, Terry Brown and Mike Sheep. I mean, these guys had magic in their ears.
yeah. No, and it's funny because you hear your productions now and it's like you can definitely tell where your frame of reference is, It's definitely coming
Yeah,
from that
absolutely. I
sound.
mean, and still today, and today you have all these bombastic drum mixes, and I like them, but still, when I want to hear a great drum sound, I don't think there's a better record for rock than Hardline Double Eclipse.
For sure.
But that is the combination of a great drum sound and, one of the best drummers in the world, playing with fire and passion and drive. But in rock, drum sound, I mean, it's like, Painkiller or all those records from those years. There wasn't an attention on how the drums would surround everything in the mix, were central to the mix. And I still like those kind of mixes, where the drums have to be central in the mix. Lots of people don't like when I say that, but to me, drums and bass are 70% of the mix. Guitars is easy. If the guitarist is good, the sound is going to be good.
Yep.
Worst case scenario is just a 57, and you have it. And vocals, if the singer is good, you can also track with a 57. You cannot track a 57 for drums only. But so when you get a great drum sound, everything is gonna glue in a different way. And if you get a great room drum sound, that's gonna make magic.
Yeah, it's funny how much a good drum sound will mask like a mediocre guitar sound.
And those records from this, there are some records from the 80s where the guitars are just freaking mids. They don't exist so bad, but they're put together with a great drum sound and a great vocal sound and a great bass sound, and they sound perfect. I mean, literally, if you have a great guitar sound and a shitty drum sound, you failed miserably. But the other way around works.
Oh, for sure. So the latest Edge of Forever record, Ritual, just came out. And I've got to say, I really love the concept behind the album. As I understand, it's a story of I think it's 2 native people left of a certain tribe who go to a residential school, and their language is basically all but ready to disappear. And it's so funny, like you being Italian, but in Canada, this has been such a topic for about the last 5 years, is about the native people and their treatment in Canada. So I really appreciated that connection coming from an Italian.
Yeah, I mean, so I've always been in love with native culture, and I have 90% of my tattoos are from Native American culture. I mean, it always made me feel bad that the biggest genocide that ever happened, it's been the Native American one, done by the Europeans and Christians. It's an unsung sad story because it's still happening today. Nobody cares about it. And we basically killed one of the greatest spiritual cultures that ever graced our planet, and nobody cares. And in my opinion, it's a great mirror of what humans can do when they're driven by money, by power, by exploitation. It's a great mirror of what humans have always been, because humans have always conquered and destroyed cultures and invaded, and we're afraid of diversity. So we get to a place, we want that place, and it's in front of us that's not like us. We fear diversity, and still today, I mean, we're doing this everywhere in the world. And I was aware, years ago about the residential schools crimes, but when it finally came out on the, in the press, I was like, okay, so let's see the reaction of the world and the reaction of the church and politicians and stuff like that was so sad. It even made it worse, you're trying to put the patch and it's worse than, the mistake. And I was like, oh, what an interesting reaction that the tribes, the nations had. The native nations were so humble but determined to not let it go. I mean, the look on their faces, it was so full of pride that I wrote down the story, and I was like, I have to build it. I have to create a story about this, because I can see, I can feel the pain that they've been through and their reaction. They're still pride of who they are, even if now they've become, a very small minority, but they're still like raising their fist against the oppressor, and they're not going gentle on what happened. They're not like, okay, thank you for asking for forgiveness. It's all good. We're friends again. They were like, no, no. We said it for years. Now that it's evident and it's out, you have to do the right thing. And for as much as I love the US and Canada, I mean, the governments haven't done the right thing. And as a Native American culture lover, my worst encounter has been going through reservations. And as every time I'm asked, oh, so you went to the reservations? Yes, you met the Indians. If you go there, it's so sad that you have to say something and have my music. And I know that it's strange that an Italian talks about these subjects, but I feel I have to say it because I've been in Canada many times, and I've been in US reservations and Canadian reservations, and I've looked in those eyes, and it's so wrong. And I remember the first time I worked with this Canadian band called One Soul Thrust, and it was on my first time in Canada. I was like, "Oh, I want to go to a reservation," and they were like, "You don't want to do this." And Celine Jones, the singer of the band, she was like, "Yeah, you'll see the truth." She said, "Okay, we'll go. You'll see the truth, and then you tell me what your feelings are." And we entered with the car into the reservation, and I didn't realize that we entered the reservation. And I was like, "Oh, what a dark place." I mean, we were coming from Canmore and, the beautiful mountains. And now it is so, I mean, it looks like a desperate land. And she was like, "Yeah, welcome to the reservation." And I was like, "And where are the natives?" She was like, there's very few. They've been killed. They've been spread around, and they've been taken away of their identity. So they're like, half breed, washed out breed with Europeans, and they're gone. And I was like, "What do you mean gone? What about their language?" They're like, "Yeah, it's not spoken anymore." "What about their religion?" It's not there anymore. What you read on Bury My Heart, at Wounded Knee, it's in the past. And I was like, "What do you mean?" And I realized, it's like you're in a prison, you're in a concentration camp. You're not in a place where these people are living a great life and whatever. And that really changed my way of looking at, not looking at the past, because the past is the past. You have to accept it, but you have to learn from the past. And to me, towards the Native American nations, nobody's looking back and going like, "Well, I mean, we treated these people really bad. We should, give them something back." And nobody cares, which is sad. I mean, when I was in Canada, I was like, "Well, that's the land of Haida and freaking Lakotas and Salem was no, it was. It's not. It's not anymore. There's very few. I became, during the years, I was like, okay, so I have this call for music. How can I make it? When I realized that I had a talent and I had a call, to make music, I said, okay, it's not enough for me. I want my, especially at my age, I don't want to talk about, rock and roll thing. It annoys me to listen to songs, it drives me off, now to, some of my favorite records, like, Whitesnake 87, those lyrics. I'm like, oh my God, how can you write that? How can you sing a song about, like, or slide it in, or like, slow and easy, and and whatever, it's, and you're breaking my heart again, it's, makes me cringe. They're fantastic songs, but I'm just talking for myself, or what I wanted to do with music. I said I have to tell stories that can plant a seed and try to make this world a better place. And, I will always side with the oppressed and not the oppressor. And, I've been labeled as a as a leftist, whatever, because I'm always siding with, the oppressed. It doesn't matter, I'm not political, but I guess there's no stronger action than talking for the oppressed, because that's a political statement, and I will always do that. And I have a small voice compared to, to the big guys in the government, but I will use my voice for the right reasons. If you want to be a person that gives back, I always refer to Brian Adams, is humble, is siding with causes. I went to, I guess it was his 2019 tour, and every ticket, like $5, €5 from each ticket sold, was used to plant a tree. And every night before the show, there was a big screen saying, "Welcome to the Bryan Adams Show. Tonight we planted 8,000 trees thanks to you coming to the show." And I was like, "Oh, that's a great use of power. That's a great use of your hard work." Because, maybe these people didn't even care, but he used his power and his hard work to make something good. And that for me is an example of being a virtuous person and being, with a great illumination towards, making this world a better place. Simple idea, Imagine if all artists would do that, especially nowadays with the 250, $800 tickets. Just give, 10% to plant trees. We would save, we wouldn't have climate change. But, unfortunately, just there's just few of those that really, use their resources to make this place more sustainable, for life.
Yeah. It's funny just mentioning Bryan Adams. It always blows my mind how big he is in the rest of the world.
It's crazy. First of all, I've seen I think 10 shows of Bryan Adams, and every time I've seen a god on stage. Great musician, fantastic singer, great entertainer, and a fantastic band. And a set list to die for. Because it's hit after hit. It's crazy. And I really love the fact that, he's using... At some point, you realize that what you have is not yours. And you better start giving back. Because you've had this, this opportunity of having a great life. And you start giving back because you realize that you had a gift. It's called gift for a reason. The gift of music. Yeah, it's a gift. It's time to give it back, And I love when people do that, small or big. It doesn't matter, every little step towards that. And I love when people who have voices use them, whatever cause. I'm vegan, so I will always side with vegans, but I don't care. I don't care the mission. If you're raising money for a hospital or whatever is good, whatever is going to make life better for some people, just do it, But I don't understand when people with power don't give back. Mm-hmm. That's something that drives me crazy. Because why are you going to bring your money, your tomb? You're gonna die. You could die in a second. And what are you going to do with all that wealth, if you didn't give back anything?
Yep, very true. Yeah, a friend of mine, his favorite phrase is, "You can't take it with you."
Yeah.
So tell me this, getting back to Edge of Forever. So the last couple records you've worked with Aldo Lenoble, I think it's, did I say his last name? Lenoble? Yeah. You guys have worked together. How did you initially come to meet Aldo and start working with him?
So I wanted to change the lineup in Edge of Forever, and I had an idea of the sound I wanted, and I couldn't find the guitarist that I wanted. And then I heard the band called Kings of Broadway, which was a side band project of Aldo's doing Nickelback, Shinedown sort of music. And for the first time, I heard Aldo not playing power metal. And I was like, that's the sound I want. But at the beginning, I was like, he's not going to say yes. Why should he say yes? But then, one day I wrote him and I was like, Aldo, I want to start Edge of Forever again. And, I really think your sound would be my dream sound. And surprisingly, he said yes. And here we are. And we did 3 records as Edge of Forever with him. And it blows me away because he plays differently than what he does in Seekersphere. So people are always like, "Oh my God, who's these guitars?" I mean, like this Jason Becker, Marty Friedman in AOR, in hard rock. He plays from a different place. And this solos are always melodic but cool but different and with a strange use of scales and notes. He's fantastic. I'm blessed. I'm blessed to work with him.
Yeah, he is. With all the different projects he does as well. I mean, he went from I like Secret Sphere to wow, this guy. There's really something to him.
Absolutely.
Really, really talented guitar player.
Fantastic human being and a musician. Incredible, solid, great, absolutely great.
So Alessandro, so you've got the new Edge of Forever. What else can we look forward to from you in the pipeline? Is there any upcoming albums you're able to talk about?
Well, I'm working on the new Iconic record with Michael Sweet, Nathan James, Tommy Aldridge, Joel Orchestra, and Marco Mendoza, which is a record that I'm really looking forward to because one of my favorite drummers is Tommy Aldridge, and I'm so looking forward to recording and mixing Tommy again. And I'm working on an instrumental keyboard trio record, but it's coming out late next year. But that's gonna be different because that's gonna be like prog, jazzy, crazy, inspired by Yes and UK and Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
I'm a big UK fan, so that piqued my interest right there. Hearing that.
You too? You too? I mean, UK. Oh my God! So you have to know that the drummer that I really wanted for the record is Terry Bozzio.
Oh wow, yeah, what a drummer!
Yeah,
What a drummer!
but unfortunately, I wasn't able to get Terry. To me, I mean, the first UK record is out of the world.
Yeah,
But Danger Money, my God! I mean, that's and Eddie Jobson, that's hands down one of the best keyboard players in history and unsung hero, like one of the best, and nobody knows him. It's crazy. The other day, I was talking to Anders Johansson from Malmsteen and the brother of Jens Johansson, and we were talking about Eddie Jobson, how good he was, and still, when they talk about the great keyboard players, obviously, we all talk about Rick Wakeman and John Lord and Keith Emerson and those guys, but really, I mean, the one of the greatest was Eddie Jobson. I mean, those two records, besides what is done with Frank Zappa and Jethro Tull, but those two UK records, oh my God! But and I'm working on a record, no vocals, it's just music, but it's like UK meets Dixie Drags and Kansas, but no vocals. There's lots of Hammond and it's crazy time signatures and the drummer is like one of the best drummers in the world, and I cannot name that, but that's gonna be my main objective for 2024 is to come out with a record playing, at my highest abilities, prog rock, crazy record.
Yeah, I think that'll be a good way too. Like you say, the Silent Force, for example, showing off your chops. I mean, you put an album like that out, and definitely the prog heads are going to go, "Whoa, where did this come from?"
Yeah. I mean, next year I'm coming out with two prog records. One I cannot talk about. I would want to say it, but it will be announced very soon. And then this one. And honestly, I'm at a point in my career I really wanted to do an instrumental record. I was like, I don't want to have guitarists. I just Hammond. It's 90% Hammond, drums and bass. And it's like, it's like a record, that's gonna be it's like Steve Lukather, he's got his own band, but he's doing, records that he couldn't do maybe with his own band, or like, Michael Landau and Charisma and those, fusion bands. And, it's just done for the pure purpose of writing. It's still in a song form. It's still very melodic, but it's technical and it's instrumental and it's keyboard based, but the drums and bass are like phenomenal. And I think people will be like, "Oh my God, that's Ale too." I mean, how many hats does he have?
That's amazing. I know you've done a couple records with Jeff Scott Soto. Are there any plans to work with him on anything in the future?
Yes, but I still don't know, any timing and but I will always be there for Jeff. I mean, if Jeff tomorrow calls me for working on a record, it's gonna be my priority.
Yeah.
Always there for him.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Alessandro, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
You're welcome. Anytime. When, anytime, it's, you're just an email away and we'll do it.
Awesome. Yeah, I really enjoyed our chat. I interviewed you, probably 3 years ago, I want to say.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Sunstorm, I think, was the record at the time.
I think it was, the first with Ronnie Romero.
I think so. I'm blanking on what record that was now. You have too many.
I think it was the Afterlife record.
That's sounding right. Are you still involved with Sunstorm or no?
Yeah. We're going to work on the record. We're going to work on a new record like in beginning of next year.
Oh, fantastic. And Ronnie's still singing for it, eh?
Yes. Ronnie's is singing. And I think it's coming out beginning of 2025 or something like that.
Oh, cool. Oh, that'll be fantastic.
Yeah. I still don't know any plan of, these and stuff, but yes.
Is there anything in the pipeline for Hardline?
We're doing shows. Honestly, I don't think we're going to make a record soon because we've been, putting out record after record. And I think Johnny's just, we just want to make shows for a little bit.
Yeah. Which makes sense, especially after COVID. I'm sure the itch to play live
we want to just do shows, and we have reduced the amount of shows, and we have raised the level, and which is always tough when you do that. And but we want to get a higher quality, especially now that with my health problems, I don't want to get on the van again, and I don't have the strength to do that. So I we said, okay, let's take it as a blessing, and we get on the road, we do it right, and great shows and last shows, but hopefully better pay and better treatment. Yeah, and but that's our plan is to play shows for like a couple of years and write the record when the record is ready. We were almost forcing a record out of us this winter, but then I said, I don't know, it's not there. We're not there as a band. And I said, if we play more shows, we're going to have, the record is going to call it itself, for the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like you say, too, I mean, eventually the well runs dry, especially if you're just constantly pumping out records. And it's like you need to live life and become re-inspired.
Yeah, I mean, that's, and I've been doing so many records in the past years that nowadays, I mean, I slow down a lot because of that, because you need to detach, from something. And Hardline, especially before the pandemic, we were doing like 40, 50, 60 shows a year.
Oh, wow.
And at some point, even the human relations in the band were always tense, because when you're on the road for so much time together with someone, it's like marriage, but being home every day. You start hating, even the smallest things, like the way you tie your shoes and stuff like that. And I think we as a band musically, especially after the last record, which is really good, we really put everything we had, and we need some time to get to the right place and write a record like that, better than that. And I guess, a few shows and we'll get hungry again for writing, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Alessandro, thank you so much for taking the time. I know I've really enjoyed the chat. And
okay, Brandon, my friend, thank you for such a great chat.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll catch you soon, and I look forward to what you have coming up next.
Thank you very much, and enjoy your day, okay?
You too. Have a good one.
Thanks.